Come to order, everybody. So, Douglas Finance Committee, October 14, 2025. Let's just identify ourselves for the record. Rob, why don't you start?
Rob Leonardi.
Heather Morin.
Sandy Kuipers.
Dick Vandenberg.
Lynn Mazzoli.
Carol Gogolinski.
I heard from Howard, and I've heard from Ryan. They won't make it. Mike, I'm not sure yet. And anyway, at this point in the meeting, we're going to turn it over to our town administrator, Matt Wojcik, because we have to reorganize.
Yeah. Remembering
Yeah. We got to do that every year.
Yeah, so every year you have to elect a new chair or keep the chair you have.
Yeah.
So I get like 10 seconds of fame. The meeting having been called to order, are there any nominations for the role of chairman, vice?
I nominate Ben.
I second.
Well, even though seconds are unnecessary,
Yeah.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, the motion is for Dick Vandenberg to remain as chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Chairman, your meeting.
We should have asked him, though, if he was willing.
Absolutely not.
You don't have a choice.
He's volunteering in the Army.
Okay.
You're all set.
All right.
She doesn't get to say.
So Vice Chair Sandy, you up for it again or not?
Oh, I would like to nominate Robert.
Okay. So we have a nomination for Robert as the chair, Vice Chair. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Carol seconds it. All right. Rob, what do you think?
Sure. I would need to learn what the
There's
duties
not a
are, what the
lot.
responsibilities are. But
If he's not here,
Yeah, if he's not here,
You run it.
it's you.
And you do not, you do not get an assigned parking spot.
Yeah.
there's no window either.
You got a great title.
So any more discussion on that motion? So the motion is for Rob to be the Vice Chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Robert, welcome.
thank you.
Peace and prosperity. All right, so if you look at your agenda, everybody, we're going to go through some of the warrant articles tonight. And our purpose tonight is more information on the warrant articles. We're not going to vote on recommending until 2 weeks from tonight. So the first one is the right to farm, and you've had a chance to read that. And because we're the Finance Committee, our focus is on financial stuff particularly. So at this point, do any FinCom members have an observation or a question about if the right to farm bylaw passes the town meeting, what kind of financial impact it'll have on the town, either our income as a town or our expenses as a town? Any comments or questions on
Well,
that?
I just wondered.
So Carol, go ahead.
If someone does have a problem with, let's say somebody's got horses or something next to them, and they got horse manure sitting next to them, and their house is a problem, if they come in and they ask for a rebate because their value of their land isn't worth as much. So I know that, I think part of what brought this, I know why these people are so mad, because I saw them having those hearings on how much they were going to charge them for their goat or something. And, but I mean, it came about, I think the hearings came about because it was my own cousin that somebody put pigs next to his well, and he ended up costing him 20 grand to build a new well, and those people quickly sold their house and got out before he could put a lien on his house, on their house. So I know where it's all coming from. So that's my only thing, that there could be a financial thing if people ask for, that their houses be valuated less money because of that, but that's about it.
Just hang on a minute, gals. We'll get you up here in just a sec, okay?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Lynn. So a property value kind of question.
Exactly,
Okay.
that's all.
Yeah, Lynn?
If someone's in violation of what they're supposed to do, like having too many animals or whatever, and they don't straighten it out, will there be a fine imposed that goes to the town?
To the town?
Yeah, like will there be fines that, if you're fined for not doing what you're supposed to do when the animal commissioner or whatever that position is, like, can somebody get fined for, improper,
Oh, I see,
you
yeah.
know? And if so, is that a source of revenue for the town?
Well, I don't see any fines in the
I didn't see fines.
bylaw. There aren't any fines.
Anybody else of a financial nature?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
I think
Heather, why don't you go
I mean,
next?
Heather, I'm sorry.
I think it's staffing, right? Are we going to have to grow our staffing in order to have oversight over this, right? And what is the impact to that?
Okay, and Rob, you had a financial question or
I have a
not?
couple of them. Are Articles 1 and 2 kind of conjoined? Because I know Article 2 is create an agricultural commission. So is that part of the establishment of Article 1? And would there be a cost involved in creating an agricultural commission?
Right.
Is that a cost to the town? I honestly don't know the answer to that. And the other question I have is, for the current commercial, because I saw the word commercial in a lot of the regulations that was cited in Article 1, it mentions commercial properties, et cetera. You know, I forgot what the commercial agricultural, what is the commercial agriculture, aquaculture, et cetera. For the ones that are existing now within the town of Douglas, do they pay any licensing fees to the town? Are there any sort of, you know, fees or anything like that that they currently have to pay? And would, in the right to farm, would these other, you know, farms have to be behold? Because I didn't see anything in the article of talking about any licensing or what have you with the town. I honestly don't know the answer to that, if that's currently required of some of the existing farms that we have here in town.
Matt, can you speak to that a minute? A license?
No,
Okay. You can't speak to it, there isn't one.
that's my interpretation.
Okay. All right, anybody else on a financial nature? All right, so Lori and Dallas, you guys are here. You want to just come to the table and we'll talk about finances? So gals, if you could just identify yourself for the record and where you live and so on, okay?
Dallas Keeney, 13 U Street.
Lori Colbert, 11 Crescent Lane.
So let's look at the first one, the whole property value thing. What's your sense of, if right to farm passes, how that affects property values, and what's happened in the Commonwealth for the, half the Commonwealth has right to farm, right?
Yep, about 140. So I guess my first thought on it is that there's nothing in the Right to Farm or Agricultural Commission that fundamentally alters how we've already been operating as a town for 279 years. As far as concerns about property value, there's nothing that has prevented that from being an issue up to now, so that it's not a change of the current status in regard to that. But I would say that our experience has been in speaking to different people in town, and we've spoken to hundreds of people at this point, that we have found it more common for people to come to us and say, I have looked for a town like Douglas for a very long time. I work in Boston and I wanted to live somewhere where I could have horses, or I wanted to live in the countryside. So I have a strong sense from the community that the status of our town as a farm town actually boosts our property value, because it is unique where we are positioned within commuting distance to Boston, but also have such an agrarian feel. And then I know there have been, I know there was one instance, I don't know what year it was, but there was an issue with a pig farm, and like everybody in town goes to that one instance, right? And I would say that there are other measures in place that address those issues. Like, that is far outside the norm, and that those issues are properly addressed by other laws that exist either at the town level and the state level that prohibit it being okay for somebody to do something like that. You can't poison a neighbor's well with excessive manure runoff and have that be okay, and but that's covered under other laws. If you have thoughts on that.
No, I agree. Multiple people, and I say multiple, I mean probably close to 80 people we've spoken to now moved to Douglas specifically because it is agrarian. I moved here cross country for that reason. All right, we moved our entire family to Douglas because we could have our animals here. And it took a long time to find something like that.
Where
So,
did you say you live?
13U,
How big is your lot?
a little over 2 acres.
And how about your lot? How big is yours?
About 2.5.
2.5 acres.
So in terms of that whole question of does right to farm lower or raise property values, anybody have any more questions about that? Do you know, just off the top of your head, in the neighboring towns that have a right to farm, has that affected their property values one way or the other? I mean, do you know anecdotally or?
I can speak to equestrians. Having a barn on your property adds around $100,000 in worth, especially if it's already got fencing. There's a lot of equestrians in New England who want a nice barn with good fencing in a town that has horse trails.
And I would say, I know we've referenced Plainfield as one of the towns that the right to farm we're proposing is very similar to one that Plainfield has, as well as Paxton. Paxton's is pretty new, it's within the last year, but Plainfield has had a right to farm very similar to what we're suggesting for 20 years, and there's been no negative impacts that's made them change their mind about that as a town.
Okay. All right, anybody else on the property value question? Okay, the next one, Lynn, you had a thing about fines and violations and so on, right?
Yeah.
Can you guys speak to that?
Just curious if there's some recourse, like if someone's not doing the right thing and they've been warned and told by the Agricultural Commission that they're in violation and they persist, like, will they ultimately be fined?
We put in the language for the Agricultural Commission that if there is an actual large-scale problem, the Board of Health would be brought in. Board of Health tried for a while to figure out fines, and they really couldn't agree on anything that made sense. The state has the ability to go after people who are being malicious. Neglect cases, abuse, obvious issues with manure runoff, poisoning your neighbor's well. The state will handle that. The Board of Health can step in and do it at their discretion as well, but putting an arbitrary number in a document like that was just too restrictive.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Is that a good answer, Lynn? Okay, anybody else on that part?
Park and handicap, you get $500 fine. That's what I was looking for, like, is there something like that, right?
And then Heather, your question was about staffing, right?
That's more the town side, right? It doesn't impact you all, right? You're not a staff.
So the town already has an animal inspector, so that already exists and is part of the town budget. We already have people who work in the Board of Health. The only new piece would be the AgCom, which is a volunteer board. And any of the activities that we anticipate the AgCom doing would be based on fundraising that they do, applying for grants. There's something in the AgCom that talks about them having the authority to apply for and accept grants to promote agriculture in Douglas. There is the possibility that we may find the AgCom actually raising money for the town in the form of doing more with the farmers market, bringing the farmers market back. I know you have experience out west with towns that get a decent bit of their income from festivals and farmers markets put on by their AgCom. So if anything, we're expecting it to be an addition to the town and not a burden.
Is our animal inspector, is he full-time?
No.
It's as
So
needed.
if we
And
encourage
you
more-
updated that, I know you hired somebody new.
If we encourage more, if you said people want to come out here because they can have a horse or something, then we may end up with a full-time animal inspector. If we have
You
more,
might have to increase on
have to
Board of Health.
increase that, yeah.
Okay, any other?
Animal inspector, the same as the dog officer? Not the same person, okay.
Okay. All right, anybody else on that issue financially? And then, was it, Rob, did you ask about the cost to the town to establish the ag?
Yeah, and I believe that's already been answered.
Okay. And then the licensing fee.
And Matt said no.
Okay.
So the licensing fees are, commercial properties have to follow state guidelines as well. They have to do their LOCs, they have to do their taxes and everything. Douglas has, the only thing we have for commercial agriculture is a special permit if you're below 5 acres and you're trying to run a business. We've been very clear to supporters of this movement, they must abide by that. We're not overriding that, we're not saying it's a free-for-all. If you want a business, you have to follow the zoning code. But otherwise, we're not looking to charge people to have their animals.
So in the cases of both of you, you have lots that are 2 acres, 2.5 acres. You just want to have your horses or your livestock, your goats, your chickens, whatever, and have the freedom to.
So, a lot of this came out of discussions that were being held at the Board of Health. In their meetings, they were talking about putting in permitting requirements. Those were going to come with fees. There was going to be a lot of intrusive documentation that you had to supply about your manure management plan and your pest control management plan and your food storage plan and maps of your property and locations of all the structures on your property and your abutters' property and how are they going to surveil that. It was a lot of cumbersome things that we haven't needed all this time. We're not having significant issues, so it doesn't make sense for us to approach it that way. This is an approach that is much more in line with, we just want to keep doing what we're doing and have it more official.
I knew that I watched those things, I said, and I don't have animals, but I said, if I had animals, this would really be setting me off with this stuff. And so I think that's what's brought this on, is that, and it's the same thing on everything else. People get fed up with you wanting to have a permit for this and a permit for that. I don't care whether it's farming or what it is. It's just Big Brother's watching everything.
Is there my lot is small, it's only half acre. I lived here before the 2-acre zoning. But if I wanted chickens, can I have chickens? Is there a lot minimum to?
So we're looking to protect hobby farming on all size parcels, and we're doing that because there are already a lot of hobby farms in town on lots that size, and they're not causing significant problems. People are reasonable about what they can have on a small lot. I'm assuming that, you wouldn't run out to get 40 goats and 20 chickens and 3 cows and 4 pigs on your property. People who do this, first of all, it's a lot of work and it's expensive to do this as well. So people don't do it, on a whim or capriciously or irresponsibly for the most part. And in those rare cases where there was somebody who wasn't being reasonable, that's one of the functions of the AgCom, is to come alongside somebody and say, I think you need to reevaluate what your property can really sustain, and to help them with knowing how to manage manure and make it not a nuisance and those things. And if there's a case where somebody is really causing an issue, that's when it's time for a legitimate complaint to be filed and properly handled by the AgCom and the Board of Health and the animal inspector, and things to be addressed.
Liz, I apologize, I don't remember reading it. Was hobby farming included in the right to farm article?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have an amendment that we also are intending to bring to the floor at town meeting that we've already cleared with a town council, took a look at it. The town moderator has said that it's proper in scope and intent. So that motion, one of the motions that we're going to bring is an amendment that would clarify that a little bit, that it is applying, our right to farm is applying to commercial properties over 5 acres, or also commercial properties between 2 and 5 acres if they have the special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that language is all in line with the zoning bylaw schedule of use currently. And then also that the right to farm would apply to all hobby, which is non-commercial backyard farming on any size property.
I never knew there was such a term.
So
have some chickens.
But if somebody decides they've on a half-acre lot and they decide they want to have a hobby of a horse, then they can.
If they have the space to comply with current zoning for shelter, and they have obviously enough room for that horse to move. I mean, there was a member of the subcommittee whose horse for 30 years lived on a half acre or a quarter acre. But she exercised him every day, you take him out every day. There's a big difference between a pasture pet, a dry lot, and the amount of animal welfare knowledge that we're trying to spread with this is extensive. But there's no possible way to put a
More thinking not
limit.
so much about the animal, which I guess I should, but I'm not an animal person. I was thinking more about the neighbor who has the horse next to him. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm not.
Well, along those lines, what have you heard about, just kind of spitballing here, with special zoning permits that would be required if it was below 5 acres, because I know Chapter 40A talks about 5 acres, or if it's 2 or more parcels, they talk about the amount of revenue that would need to be generated per acre. If a town starts issuing more and more of those permits for properties below 5 acres, is there any risk to the town from a litigation standpoint? Is there, that would expose the town to litigation costs because they were issuing, numerous permits below that 5 acre minimum?
So if you're speaking to Chapter 40, Section 3 on that?
48, Section 3, yes.
So that entire piece of legislation is about you cannot put cumbersome zoning regulations on an established commercial property. It's not applicable to hobbying. So if you suddenly had 1,000 citizens decide they all want to have full LLCs and all the tax laws that go into that, maybe in 50-something years you might have an issue if this town suddenly turns into a metropolis. But we're primarily speaking to hobby farming, backyard farming, people who just want their own animals. There should be no issue with litigation within the town.
But you mentioned earlier that there is a permit required for those that are below, commercial farms below 5 acres, correct?
Between 2 to 5 acres.
That's commercial, though.
That's commercial.
Right, but I'm saying
Yeah.
if there was a lot of those permits issued in the town for that 2 to 5 acre, is there a risk? I'm just asking. I don't know yes or no. I'm just asking, is there a potential for risk of litigation?
I have a question on what would be commercial. Let's say you put up a barn, and then you rent out a couple of stalls for somebody to keep their horse. Would that then be commercial because you get money in for the stalls?
The state views barn and stabling separate from commercial farming. So it's a,
The state does?
Yes.
There's a law that says if you're charging people money for a stall, it's different than commercial,
it falls under different laws. There's different licensing requirements for that.
but you do have to have some license requirements for that?
If you are breeding, if you have stallions on property, or if you are training on property, there are different state laws for that. But it's a separate
Because what do you
jurisdiction.
mean by training?
If you are a licensed horse trainer within the state of Massachusetts, you are required to carry a
Like
very specific
Teaching
license.
people how to ride a horse?
Yes, or training a horse on the ground for safety.
All right, anybody else on financial issues related to the Article 1 of the warrant? Because we're going to go right to Article 2 on the Agricultural Commission, but...
I mean, I guess I would just add to your,
go ahead.
your question about the exposure of the town. It is within the discretion of the town to grant those permits for a commercial farm between 2 and 5 acres. That's a zoning board of appeals question, and that already exists regardless of what we do here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else on the first warrant article then? Again, we're not voting to recommend one way or the other tonight, we're just getting information, so. All right, let's go to Article 2 then of the warrant. Gals, why don't you just stay here then? Can anybody see a financial impact or have a question about the financial impact of Article 2, the creation of the Agricultural Commission?
I think that was already covered, but that's me personally.
Yeah, just asking.
Yeah, the questions that we had, I think those were already covered.
I know, I don't remember if it was your question, somebody had asked about, are these articles like conjoined and
Yes,
bundled?
that was me. That's the question.
That's a question that, there's going to be a Board of Selectmen meeting on November 4th with the town moderator there, where he talks about, how things are going to be choreographed and presented. So that's going to be kind of worked out at that meeting. We have some questions ourselves about, they are related, but because they are 2 separate bylaws, they have to be voted on separately, but we have a few amendments that we're bringing to the floor, and how is that all going to play together as far as, bundling or not bundling, and that's ultimately going to be decided at that Board of Selectmen meeting in a few weeks.
Right, because I would imagine if for some, let's say for some reason Article 1 does not pass, is there a need for Article 2 then?
There are towns in Massachusetts that have solely a right to farm and without an AgCom, and vice versa. There are towns in Massachusetts that have an AgCom with no right to farm. So they're not conjoined in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
They work together very well, though.
All right, anybody else? Article 2, financial.
And the commission is just a volunteer
Correct.
position of 5 members?
Correct. Appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and that is that's based on Massachusetts state law about agricultural commissions. That's not a choice.
No cost.
Correct.
Sandy?
So I would say financially, when I look at this, it is an advantage to have something like this in our town because it protects the nature and encourages more people. Like you said, you came here. I know I sold a house that the people wanted it and were willing to pay for that because they wanted horses. So I see it as being an advantage financially for the town to have this protection in place. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Ideally, as Lori said earlier, we want to improve education. We want to bring back farming knowledge that's been lost. And in doing so, there are avenues to make that an income positive process as well for the town. We are in no way looking to increase the financial burden on anyone. We are trying to help protect what Douglas already is and make it better.
And there's recognized value in preserving agricultural land. I know, was it Lexington, right?
Yeah,
that we had looked at.
Dave was talking about.
Where the town has spent a few $1 million buying agricultural land to preserve it. So, other towns that are more urban are having the taxpayers burdened with the cost of buying up agricultural land to protect it, and we would rather be proactive and just protect what we already have.
As a curiosity, I'm sorry to just go off on a tangent here, Dick.
Go ahead, Rob.
Carol and I also sit on the Master Plan Committee. Have you guys thought at all, because that's a 20-year forward look
Right.
for the town of Douglas, have the two of you thought about reaching out to the chairperson of the Master Plan Committee to do any sort of presentation to them, just as as a curiosity? Because if this is something you truly want to have incorporated into the town on a go-forward basis, I think it might be worthwhile to make that presentation to that
I think it
committee.
would be worthwhile presentation of the master plan, definitely.
Yep, we can take a look at that.
We'd be more than happy.
It's, it's a big deal.
We want to talk about it to anybody who's, interested in listening to us and asking questions. We really are passionate about it and think that it's a really good thing for the town, so, yeah.
Well,
All right.
I have questions. You live right down the street from
You didn't go over and ride a horse.
me. Well, I know whose house she bought. My friends.
Okay.
I speak to them
Down the other
often.
end.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else on Article 2 financial impact or questions? We all good with that? Ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, we appreciate it.
All right, thanks for coming.
All right, next we're going to have Mr. Wojcik give us his administrator report, and then Matt, are there a couple warrant articles you can speak to?
I can try.
Like the marijuana one?
Yeah.
That was so long.
Well,
Thank you, guys. Does it replace a current one? But anyway,
We'll get there.
yeah.
I'm going to follow up on a couple of your questions. The animal inspector budget is a stipend, $3,269. And then you have a small expense budget. There's a mileage account and a couple of other things, a couple $100. That's probably going to go up because I basically made a change with the animal inspector. And it is not a full-time position. How it works is you've got to change your mindset to public health and animal welfare considerations. That is the animal inspector's mission, is to take a document that is called a barn book, and it's almost like a census, and visits all the barns and notes what kind of animals are there. The barn book is a confidential document. The animal inspector is a state official, so the town does not see barn books. If there is an outbreak of an animal disease that is contagious, for example, the animal inspector would have the barn book and would notify people within a certain radius of the outbreak. Chickens are a good example. We have a case of avian flu in Sutton, and you need to pay attention to your flock and look for symptoms, and if your flock does get sick, there are things we're going to have to do. It's a way of communicating to people that they have a disease condition nearby. The barn inspections are done this time of year. All barn books must be completed by January. There are conditions under which an animal inspector can basically go up the food chain, so to speak, to a higher level of state government to ask for backup or an additional inspection if he notices that the conditions that animals are experiencing are poor. Like all conversations, it starts off with a warning or an observation with the landowner. You know, I'm a little bit concerned about this, but I'll be back in 30 days and we'll just talk about it some more. Barn inspectors often build healthy relationships with the farmers and owners in their area. So once the inspections are done, there really is no reason for any further interaction with anyone unless there's a warning issue or a complaint. The state is absolutely adamant that we do not combine a Board of Health inspector's role with the animal inspector's role, and we do not combine animal control officer with the barn inspector's role. And at first I thought that's dumb because that's not very efficient, right? To get somebody who has this expertise that can serve all these different roles. Their focus is on keeping the information confidential and putting the owner at ease to supply the information that the Animal Welfare Division wants to be in possession of. So if the person coming to your house has the ability to write you a ticket, you're going to be reluctant to have that conversation because some people can be arbitrary, give some people a little bit of power, and all of a sudden they're going crazy with it. So they ask us not to commingle those responsibilities. It happens that our barn inspector works for 2 towns, and the other town where he works is the animal control officer. The town is half the size of Douglas. So they have to make some sacrifices. So that's that. In terms of licensing, obviously I wasn't being facetious, but we don't really license, we don't license hobby farms at all. And I don't know how much enforcement we put to collect our $10 business license if somebody has got a commercial operation. A lot of that is self-reporting because it's $10. Becomes an issue with zoning if someone seeks a business license in a residential zone. So for those of you with a background in zoning in Douglas, you know that businesses are not allowed in residential zones unless there are some specific conditions met. So that's where we are there. And in terms of liability, I'll just follow up on that question because it is kind of a town administrator question. The answer is that the special permits that are granted for those smaller lots are conducted through a process. There's a standard somebody has to meet to get a special permit because it's a special dispensation. So the only way that creates liability for the town is if the zoning board were handing them out and abutters were appealing the awards of those special permits on a regular basis and winning. I actually don't live in fear of that. I think the zoning process is highly fact-driven, and the zoning board is supposed to do an investigation when it issues special permits that the activity being permitted is in line with the neighborhood's character and will not upset the neighborhood unduly. So that's kind of the standard they apply. Now you can drive a truck through a standard like that. I get it. But there is a process, and there's due process when a special permit is filed for abutters to come and hear the case and actually submit evidence that's contrary. So that's kind of how that piece of it works. So that's my best attempt to close your loose ends. In terms of my report, let me just, this week I got this very high-level report from the MMA. It's called The Perfect Storm. Cities and towns face historic fiscal pressures. I thought it would give everybody a nice context for the budget discussion this year.
Bedtime reading, Matt?
Both for the things that, the observations that apply to Douglas and the ones that don't.
Thanks, Matt.
So there are a great many communities that are facing more significant financial constraints than us. And some of them are communities that are quite a bit larger than us and you would think of as quote-unquote wealthier or more likely to support additional spending through an override or whatnot. If you looked at this last year's track record for overrides, it wasn't very good. A lot of towns sought them and they were defeated in Northbridge, defeated in Franklin, and some others that are not far away from us. So my general view of this report is it's pretty helpful, but the chart on page 6, and I did not want to be criticized for printing in color if I'm giving you a document about budget pressure, so I skipped it, but it does make the charts harder to read. But if you look at figure 4, budgetary pressures vary dramatically among city and town types, and it breaks the Commonwealth into rural, suburban, urban, and so-called gateway communities. You'll lose your densely populated urban areas, the major cities. You'll notice that the rurals had very slow tax growth. They had a reduction overall in state aid. Their education spending was slightly below keeping pace. Their overall public employment was down significantly, and their average wages were up very significantly, or at least in terms of the scale on this chart. That is the single largest change.
Are we
is in
considered
the
rural?
wages. Yes, we are considered rural. So the takeaway is in the text on page 6, which is that rural communities, in order to maintain a stable employment base and provide the services that they have promised to their communities, they're paring back staff and increasing the salary of the people who remain in order to be competitive. And that's pretty much our story, for sure, over the last 3 or 4 years. The budget outlook, I guess the best way to be, is that I'm working much more diligently every day on the budget in October of this year than I have really ever since the first year I started here, and Select Board wanted me to put together a 5-year projection for the first time. So we've identified that because our overall education spending, and that's everything, so that's not really the Douglas Public Schools as much as it is Norfolk Aggie, BVT, and school bus transportation, that went up so much last year. They absorbed almost every penny of new revenues. So last year, new revenues, 90% went to the education budget, 90 cents on the dollar, and only 10. And we reduced our expense budget by about 1.5% last year. We cannot sustain that pressure forever, and we're under other pressures. So when the budget forecast, when I started working at the end of August, beginning of September, I was walking around rather to every meeting I was at saying, it looks like I have a red number and it's about $300,000, and it's not a good place to be. So here's your update since then. Do you want the good news first or the bad news?
Bad news.
Yeah, give
Then
us
we
the
can have
bad.
good-
The bad news first. Okay, so the bad news first is I cannot in all good conscience project new growth for fiscal '27 at a very large number. In fact, it's going to be the most conservative number I've ever used in a budget. And I think the reason for that, in terms of direct data, is we know what's in the pipeline. New growth is a function of building permits. So you're looking at the number of building permits you've issued and what's in the pipeline. We have a lot of talk around town, subdivision this, subdivision that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The rubber hits the road when you actually issue a building permit and somebody goes out there and digs a foundation. So we think we're going to be very close to the estimate for the year we're in. We estimated 250. I think we're going to be just a little bit below that. But for next year, for the budget, I'm only putting in 200,000, which would be the lowest new growth figure the town has had in about 13 years. Because we can always go up, but if I over budget it, coming down would be very difficult.
Yep.
So we're not going to do that. That's one piece of bad news. There's one other so far, right? I'll give you a preview of other potential bad news in a second. The town of Douglas, through the Massachusetts Strategic Health Group, had placed our retiree coverage with Aetna. in a plan design called Medicare Advantage, which when we started 7, 8 years ago, was kind of a, I don't want to say new, but it was the hot thing. It was the way to go to load up some pretty good benefits into an affordable plan. And what was interesting was that the carrier that we were working with was trying to gain entry to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They didn't have a book of business here. So MSHG gave them an opportunity to get a fairly large book fairly quickly. So when they responded to our bid, they were very aggressive. So we were paying about $330 per member per month with Tufts, and we cut that down to less than $280. So that first year. And then, because they were so generous, Aetna locked us in with a rate cap for 3 years. They also gave us volume discount incentives, so if we grew the group and we brought more and more people in and put them into the Aetna plan, that our rates would be stabilized, right? They take $10 off per member per month if you hit certain targets. So our brokers, being enterprise young fellows, added the city of Fall River to our covered block and several other large purchase groups. So 2 years ago, MSHG was the largest Medicare Advantage group in Massachusetts, because the GIC does not offer Medicare Advantage. Over the last almost 2 years, the storm clouds have been gathering for retiree plans across the entire menu. And this year, I think the proverbial, since the farm folks were just here, the manure hit the fan, and the rate increases are out of sight.
What are they?
I promised the broker, since he wants to try to get a lower rate, that I wouldn't blow his, so it's not our broker, so our broker is Alliant, and that's who manages our actives and our self-insured trust fund. But we stayed with MSHG for retirees because that's where the book is, and that's NFP. So I don't really want to completely sour the relationship with them while they're working on trying to get a lower rate. But October 1st has passed, so they were supposed to tell us. It's not 100%, but it's more than 50. So
More than what?
50%.
Increase?
Yeah. So we started off low, so I think we're looking at two trends. One is we were starting off low because we had all of these incentives in place for volume discounts and rate caps. With the Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of those incentives, the wheels fell off those incentives. So we're seeing the catch-up. And I think that catch-up could explain as much as $100, $120 PMPM, right? The rest is inflation across the entire marketplace. So our active plan, I already built in a 12%, which is very low, but it's probably justifiable for us. 12% 2 years in a row is 24, and that's going to keep us kind of competitive. But with the retirees, we're just paying a price. Somebody gives us a premium, and that's what we pay. I asked the broker a couple of questions, though, that I want to relate the answers because I think it's important. Another plan type is called Medicare Supplement. It tends to have far fewer benefits than Medicare Advantage. And of the supplement plans that this broker has been placing, and NFP is a very large municipal brokerage, the rates being charged for Medicare supplements are not much lower than what he's able to get Aetna to give us for Advantage. So there's...
You need a drug plan too now?
You need a drug plan. Yeah, right. If you have supplement, then you need to add the drug plan. So, and he also said that he had several groups that had a per member per month rate that was almost $200 higher than us. So at that market environment is where we're kind of doing that Dory thing, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. But it added, when I put in the actual increase into our town budget, because we split this 50-50 with our retirees, the town share went up $100,000. So
any of the retirees ever say, you know what, this is ridiculous, I can get a zero premium Medicare Advantage plan in the individual market and just leave?
Haven't seen that yet.
Maybe they should consider that.
Are you going to leave your business card?
Give them my card.
I think they see there's an advantage to having 50% of their premium picked up by the town, right? So what are they actually paying out of their pocket? How does that compare to what they can get?
If they did it on their own, they're paying the Part B cost. Do you pay the Part B cost for them?
No.
Okay, so they're paying Part B, and they get an Advantage plan for no cost, with no deductible, with out-of-pocket maximums I've seen now since October 1st is hit, and the 26 plans are out. The highest I've seen is Blue Cross is $92.5 for an out-of-pocket maximum, but everybody takes Blue Cross, But you're paying nothing for your plan. So you're paying $185 unless you have an income-related adjustment amount because you've made so much money. I mean, in other towns, I have people coming to my office all the time comparing their retiree benefit to what they can do on their own.
Yeah.
I had that
So,
this morning.
yeah, it may be a conversation we can have. I think under 32B, I have to offer
Yeah.
a plan. So, but assuming that the current census keeps it, it's 100,000. So that's your sum total of bad news in terms of my floating target. Took 100 away from revenue and added 100 in costs from the last time I talked to you. So you ready for the good news?
Good news.
Matt, before you do the good news, when in the timing cycle do you get your first glimpse of what the BVT number will be? Is that January,
All
February?
right, so you want to go to the prognostication of bad news, huh? You're jumping right to it. The one thing that I'm very concerned about or worried about is BVT.
Because they're doing that,
No, I think of the lottery system as
lottery,
being
yeah.
our potential way to escape a bad year,
okay.
right? So it kind of depends on how the lottery is designed, how many kids from Douglas enter the lottery, and whether they implement it the way they say they're going to design it. I haven't seen a design. I don't know what it looks like.
They're still
It's not that
talking
we're not
about it, all right.
engaged. So behind the scenes, we're engaged very aggressively with a concept of you kind of have to allocate your lottery share by your share of the high school age population in the catch area. So the mud here in the ointment is the current senior class at BVT is our lowest grade level enrollment in the school. So in other words, we've got about 25 in the senior class.
Okay.
Freshman class is 40. I believe the sophomore class is 35. So what kind of year are we going to have? So even if we have a modest year and we only enroll 25 freshmen, it's not going to change our enrollment. So the census portion of driving that budget might net to zero, but we'll still have their inflation and whatever else they build into their, call it tuition for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So what if they admit 40 again? Well, that's 15, a net 15 times the tuition rate plus the inflator. So BVT is a huge wild card in the budget this year. I think we've communicated in every way possible to them that they're killing us and that we just can't do it anymore. We've been saying that for years. I think at this point, we really are waving the white towel. Well, there is nothing we can do.
So just,
And along those lines, I mean, this is why I had raised the issue last year about the fact that they're retirees, that BVT is picking up 85% of the premium, whereas the town of Douglas, it's only 50%. We're getting absolutely destroyed. I mean, it's easy, they tout how, all of their teachers have been there forever, and it's, when you're paying above market to keep the teachers and you're giving them above market benefits, why would someone want to leave? And it's great when you're not the one that has to pay for it, you lump that onto all the 13 towns. So it's something that I brought up in these meetings last year, was about you know, that 85% hasn't changed, I think, since I said it was like somewhere in around like 1990 was the last time that changed. And so they have this largesse that they give, and this year is when they're negotiating their new contract with their teachers. So, like it or not, you know, our town representative, I hope he's speaking on behalf of the town, because whatever is being negotiated with these teachers, I don't know how blind we are to it, but who knows what they ultimately give them as part of this new contract. It could be just a big punch in the nose to us.
So if I could just speak a minute here, Matt. So in June or July, I went to Valley Tech by myself and met with the new guy, Anthony Steele. No relation to Remington Steele.
It's a great Hollywood name, though. Tony Steele.
And his sidekick, Connors. No relation to Jimmy Connors, but I shared some of those same concerns with those guys. And I also went over to Mark Potter's house, who's our town representative on the Valley Tech Board. He lives down the street from me, not that far. And we had a great chat, and I shared some of these concerns that we brought up. And I asked Mark if he'd be willing to come to the Finance Committee sometime, just by himself, and hear some of our concerns as Douglas people. He said, oh, absolutely, so on and so forth. So that might, I don't know when Valley Tech starts going on their, they're probably working on their budget now, Matt, I would guess, right? I mean, school started, but if sometime in January, say, for instance, you want to bring in Anthony and Mark and just share some of these things, I think they're open to that, but...
I would say sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I wouldn't wait till January,
I
because...
think if you're doing negotiations, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you're, because I do have experience with this, you're negotiating now, you're starting now. So I think you want to get who all you can get from BVT in here to have a conversation and be very frank about where we are, right? And like the lottery system, I heard, because I am on school committee, being transparent, I'm the chair on school committee. I've heard of the lottery, they're still working out the kinks. What does that do? We also have North Fork Aggie, that's gone up significantly too as well. I think it's a combination of making them understand there's only X amount of dollars to go around, right? And healthcare is going to go through the roof. I mean, we're all facing it, right? And so that's a budget cruncher. You know, it's a buster. It is going to bust us.
So if we wanted to speak to Valley Tech people, we should do that pretty ASAP.
Next
then.
meeting.
You want the negotiation people, because he may not be on negotiations. You need to get to the negotiation people to have the conversation. These are our concerns.
So what is this lottery?
They're, instead of going before where you have to do an interview and everything else, and they look at the whole
Right,
student,
not
they're doing a
doing-
lottery process.
Instead of,
So they just had open house, I believe last week they started the open house. Kids have until January. So the lottery hasn't been documented yet. I think they were going for, I think last week or the week before. So I haven't had a chance to go and look at that because I don't think it's been out there yet. But there's a new lottery process to enter BVT.
It's state law.
Yes.
So all the Votex.
oh, so they changed
Because
this.
they only took the cream of the crop before.
Well, you could see, I mean, again, the lottery could be, if you're an A student, you get 5 tickets in there. If you're a B student, you get 4. If you're a C student, you get 3 tickets, right? So it's how they put together that lottery system.
Like that.
The statistician in me says that is therefore not a lottery.
There you go.
Is that being talked
It's the
about?
NBA.
I don't, like I said, it hasn't been, there's been stuff thrown out there.
How about the people that want to go into being a mechanic or a plumber get to go there and everybody else go to college?
Yes, all of it's been,
Right.
so until it's documented and
Stay in your
approved.
school.
Matt, carry on with your...
Yeah, I don't want to make crazy global comments, but
Yeah.
I'm going to, just because I think there's a trend and we need to pay attention to it. The European system of education has been quite different from ours for a very long time. Guess what? Whether we want it or not, it's what we're getting. It's what the kids and parents are opting to do is graduate high school in the 12th grade ready to work. And the notion of going to a fancy brand name college and getting all kinds of student aid for an education that could cost you over 200 grand has lost its shine, and it's not what it was. So I was just looking at my hometown newspaper. I grew up in Cumberland, Rhode Island, lived there for 47 years, and graduated Cumberland High School. It's a big school, it's a big town. There's 1,400 kids in the high school right now. 3 years ago, they added a career prep track, a career pathway. That's all the same offerings as BBT, right? So it's pre-engineering, it's EMT, CNA, some of the other cosmetologies and those other things. Out of the 1,400, how many are in the pathway? This is only 3 years old.
1,400.
Well, don't steal. 524.
A third.
A third of the student body chose that pathway over the traditional Cumberland High School, gen ed, college ed. And we had the Dewey system. That's how old I am. But the business faculty kind of lost its appeal because that wasn't really you weren't going to secretarial school or Catherine Gibbs or whatever anymore. And then the Voc piece kind of went to a regional Voc school, the Davies Technical School, and some of the others. So that all kind of disappeared, and then it was college, and you couldn't compete as a public school, especially in Cumberland, because you got creamed by Mount St. Charles and St. Ray's and LaSalle and all the places that upper middle class kids go. So this is an interesting development. I don't think it's going to go away. I think we need to be thinking about how we can compete in the new marketplace for kids to stay with your system and offset the rest of the costs that we pay. Because otherwise, we're going to be an isolated system that provides certain specialized forms of education to the high achievers, to folks who need extra help. And there won't be a whole lot of kids in between to fill out the rest of the population. So it's a little bit scary. So that's a nightmare. You cut off my good news. You want any more nightmares?
No, we want the good news, Matt. Waiting for the good news.
I'm feeling reasonably confident that our active plan, all of our insurance products are properly caught in my forecast. So 12% for health and property and casualty had already locked in a cap. So unless there's a major force majeure kind of thing, I think our property and casualty rates that we locked in will stay roughly the same. So I think there's stability there. In terms of good news, I'm going to enhance the revenue side of the budget with two decisions. One is local receipts, and this is really Gene's work product more than mine. We are very, very conservative in projecting revenues for the town, so that's how we keep the budget very modest and don't add any frills to it. We just don't think we should be looking to spend out every last penny, so we'd rather turn back to free cash than blow it on the operating budget over time. So from time to time, though, you do have to revisit your revenue estimates, because if you're really missing low, you might actually be kind of hurting yourself because you're going to start cutting things that you don't need to cut because the revenue is recurring and it's coming every year. So last year, we continued a trend that has been in place for a little while. We budgeted $1.7 million for local receipts. We actually took in $3.47 million. Now, there's significant chunks of non-recurring revenue streams in there, including investment income. That's not going to repeat, and some others. But even if you add up your most modest assumptions about what is going to be a recurring revenue source, I had budgeted 1.8 for this coming year, and I think I'm going to be more comfortable going with 2.1. So still far short of 3.4, but it's 300,000 to the plus. I just told you that we had some negatives, so there's a plus. But the other plus that I'm going to put in is, a little reluctant to do this, but I think it's appropriate. I might just increase our scoop of the ambulance receipts account. The town was sold years ago on the idea that the ambulance receipts account would largely support the ambulance operation. And we already take a lot of money out of that account, $385,000 a year. What's the good news? I'll tell you what the good news is. We have one vacancy right now. We advertised, and we got 57 applications.
Wow,
For what position?
Firefighter medic.
wow, that's fantastic.
So that's really a huge turnaround.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the credit to all of the folks who work in our fire department, Chief Furno, Deputy Chief Manning, but the union staff. It's a place that people want to work. And we built this reputation. We were forward-thinking. We brought in medic-only folks to backfill shifts and make sure that we can continue to deliver services even if they're not firefighters. So I think we have a real good chance of adding a firefighter medic, which is our highest rate of pay and our highest skill level in the department. So if we're going to do that, I had said I was going to freeze their head count. But when you get 57 applications, that's like the wrong message to send when you're on the upside. So I'm just going to scoop their account. And in my mind, I don't want to take the full salary, but I might take some delta. Because the person being replaced is not a medic, just is a firefighter, like a step 3 firefighter. Going to another town for perfectly good reason, just to be busier on the fire side, since he's not a medic. So I haven't settled on the exact figure, but if it's 50 or 60,000 more, then I've closed my gap. My goal is to get my gap as close to about $100,000 from the bigger moves, because at 100 I should be able to sharpen a pencil and close 100. The current forecast has Douglas Public Schools at a 4% year over year. That's what I told the superintendent I would do, and that's what I'm going to stick to. The trouble is I think he needs more, and I can't do anymore. Can't. We absolutely have to partner with our school system on this whole school bus transportation issue.
Yeah.
It's not about beating up the school bus company. It's about doing what other neighboring communities. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I was having a meeting with an official in another town that provides special ed transportation to us. And I said, you guys are doing all right with us. And he actually laughed and said, we're making a lot of money off of you. I'd like to get some of that back. I think we can use a capital budget and some other fairly low-hanging fruit. And the idea here is not to do a system-wide, it's crazy, don't do a system-wide thing, we're going to privatize this or that. No, that's cuckoo. Buy one van. Find the one kid who is a stable customer. We know they're not a district placement. They're going to be with us for a long time. It's not a bad ride. I'm telling you, the return on investment, the payback is going to be 18 months, maybe 24. So we got to do it. We just got to do it. At $250 a trip, we cannot continue to do this. So even if you just shave off a couple of incremental points, and to me, if all the other pieces fit in, if there were a savings there, it could stay with the schools. But right now, I can't promise that piece on the transportation side, because that comes from the town, and I got to make sure I got enough.
So Matt, if we moved in that direction, would that be at the annual town meeting in May then, as part of the regular budget then?
Yeah, so
Could it be?
Because I'm so bullish on this.
Yeah, you are.
I have told the superintendent that we'll buy the bus for you. And if you want us to pay the training, because you have to be trained. You can't just drive a bus with a kid in it. You got to know what you're doing.
It'd be more of a van, right?
Yeah. With those little flip-top things.
Yeah.
It's a school bus when it's driving 65, and it's not a school bus when they're driving 80. Except when they have... Can I just tell a story out of school? Well, I've got a kid, one of my kids is on a district placement. They got into one of these buses with the flip-top. Now, they don't know what my car looks like.
Yeah.
So they took off. And I was right behind him. So I'm going like 80 miles an hour on the Braga Bridge, and I spot them, right? So I sped up to 90 to catch him. Now I'm behind the guy. He's going 85 miles an hour with my kid in the
You gotta be kidding.
on their way to Lakeville. And so I called the bus company. I said, not for nothing, but the black car that was behind your guy was actually clocking him. That was me, and I should have videotaped it. My instinct was to dash cam it.
Yeah.
And I didn't, So he denied, oh, I wasn't going that fast, but whatever. That's what we get with people, so I'm sorry for that. But
Do we have more
I
good
feel
news?
like I need to confess.
Do we have more good news yet, Matt, or are we?
That's it. So, but I think
Okay.
where I am right now is like $1.90.
Okay.
So that's something I feel like if things break our way, we'll be in good shape. If things don't break our way, it'll be tough.
Yeah.
What are we looking for positives? Economic development continues to be the silver bullet. So,
Still no tenant, right, down?
so you've got,
You talking the cubes, Lynn?
I'm trying
Big thing
to
down there.
respect my discussion partner's confidentiality. We have 4 suitors for that building. Everything's on hold because the company that wants to develop Pine Sand and Gravel is the front runner to take that building and build a new one. So that, because they want that campus, they want that,
The whole area?
the entire square footage of both buildings to be under their control. So it gives you a sense, it's not Matt's Corner Hardware Store that wants to put this together. But the other companies,
moving forward, though.
I'll tell you that as a economic development guy, I don't want them to take both buildings. The other 3 suitors are very stable companies in businesses that typically weather recessions extremely well. So from my perspective, that's the kind of tenant it's worth waiting for, because if you know they're going to take a lease, be there for 20 years, because people are always going to eat snacks or drink soda or whatever, that's who we want there. And somebody who's selling the latest widget, they might be there for a couple of years, make a hand over fist money, and then just dry up. So it's kind of where I'm at with it. They are still paying tax. They have an abatement request in. So I think where we're at is, if we can get through the next couple of months and get them the permissions they want for Pine Sand and Gravel, I might get a little bit aggressive on the phone and say, drop the abatement so I can release that. I have $450,000 sitting in the overlay because of that stupid abatement request. It will come back into free cash, but it's still usable there. Just a couple of points to recap, and I'll finish. The net financial position of the town is still very strong. A couple of reasons for that. We closed with a decent free cash number. And by decent, I mean not as high a balance that we closed with last year. But we did not spend a lot of the project funds that town meeting approved. So what you have available to you is still pretty much the same number. It's unexpended. Some of that I anticipate pushing out the door. So we have some rehab project at the fire station that I would like to get done. But in terms of the purchase of the property at 875, we didn't spend a dime of the 875. All of the due diligence we did came out of the operating budget, or ARPA. So the 875 is still there. We're not going to make that purchase, and we may not need to purchase property. So that we're going to leave that there and may be able to apply it to the project rather than purchase of real estate. That's kind of a hope.
Is there any ARPA money floating around yet, or is that all spent?
So what do we have left for unexpended balance? I think we still have a small amount left on Depot Street, but it's...
Depot Street and then the public buildings are the only 2.
Yeah, Depot Street is encumbered with an actual live project. The public building account that Gene just referenced is our contractual relationship with Weston and Sampson for all of our architectural work. In this case, the highway barn design and some of the analysis that goes along with it. There's a $61,000 left in that. Jean is uncertain now, but at 9 o'clock this morning, she told me it was $61,000. I didn't spend any since then, so I would assume that she was right. But it's just not a lot of money. We got, out of the millions that we got, we applied it all to the designed purposes from the federal government, so we didn't turn any back.
Good.
No, out of our cold, dead hands will they pull the ARPA funds.
What sort of increase do you have for EBT? What number are you putting in your budget for that?
4.5.
And
Wasn't last year 7?
10.
the last,
Last
No,
year,
After that magical give back, I think it was 7. I thought it was about
Oh, no.
7 last
It was
year.
double digits.
10
it was
and a half.
more, no, I think it was more like 13.
Was it?
I was following what I was remembering.
Well, I have a note to myself to give Mark Potter a call, so maybe in the next couple of meetings, we can have him and,
So before you think I'm crazy to say 4.5,
Right.
again, I'm not feeling that 4.5 is going to be the number, okay? There are two key assumptions there. One is no net change in student enrollment, so that we would not get more than 25 new freshmen. And that their overall budget would be up 4.5.
I kind of noticed,
I'm not so sure I believe that myself, but I'm hoping with
it
it.
seemed like in the past, when we gave them a hard time, they ended up taking a lot more students from us. That might have been just my imagination, or it might have been just coincidence. But we gave them a hard time, we wasn't going to do their budget, and all of a sudden, next year, they're taking a whole bunch more students.
Well, in that case, we should just egg them on over in Hopedale, and they'll take all the Hopedale's kids.
There you go. There
We
you
did
go.
that, Hopedale, though, right? So, I mean,
But there are other towns that saw a really big increase, and there was no budget tension. So Uxbridge had a really big increase, so did Northbridge, and I don't think they pushed too hard back on the budget. Not as hard as we did, or Millbury, or...
Well, I think now with this lottery stuff, they can't pull that. But I'm telling you, I think they did. This was a number of years ago, and I think they did. But
it might be a different situation with a different superintendent,
that could be.
you know?
gotta see how the lottery works.
Yeah.
That'll be all telling, but then after the lottery comes in, if the child from that town turns it down and that shop's available for someone here who wants that shop, guess what? Your number's gonna go up.
Yeah.
All I can say is this, I spent a lot of time consulting a specific group of people as a business consultant. There were founder owners who had a vision, they formed a small business, and it got to be, 125 employees, $150 million in revenue. And when somebody with that special vision leaves, the whole organization changes. They don't all necessarily die or fold, but they change. And Dr. Fitzpatrick was a force to be reckoned with. I really lost a lot of respect for him over the last few years. He's still a very bright man, and still really had a lot of charisma and a very strong following. The problem with being such a bright star is that you kind of overshadow your principal of your school, Anthony Steele, who is now your superintendent. So will he strike out on an independent course and kind of set his own mandate and be popular for his own reasons? Or is he going to try to do something that's really hard to do, which is replicate the success of your predecessor, who was sort of a guy with a lot of vision and energy? So I don't know. The lottery will only work based on how it's designed.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed here, it says the sluggish state aid. Is that hurting us, the fact that we're getting a lot less money off of the state?
I'm planning on showing you guys a chart.
Yeah.
It's in an all-important, extremely valid, necessary chart to show you. The town of Douglas still gets $9 million a year in Chapter 70.
Wow. Chapter 70 for the roads? No.
Schools.
For the schools?
Now, that's shared on both the town and school side, because it goes to the general fund,
Right,
because
right.
it's used for
Right.
general fund expenses that impact the
Yeah.
schools, including their health insurance and some of the admin and whatnot. But I'm going to show you what the tax burden looks like in communities very close to us that don't get anywhere near that much money.
Wow.
So I think your eyes will pop out of your head when you see what your tax rate would be if you didn't have that Chapter 70
Right.
to rely on.
Right.
Now, we've gone from 2012, you were, as a town, you were more than 40%, almost 45% of your entire town budget was Chapter 78. We've gotten that down to 25%. So you're a little bit less vulnerable to changes at the state level. But other than the town of Munson and a couple others, nobody in the Commonwealth has this much Chapter 78.
Why do you think that is?
It's an anomaly.
Yeah, because it could change though.
It's because there were a number of factors came into play that there were basically years when there was hold harmless. So instead of adjusting Douglas downward for declining enrollment, the town was held harmless at its previous year's aid levels.
Okay.
And then in years when there were increases, depending on the formula they used to calculate the increase, Douglas got increases. And when the program started, Douglas was a very small rural community with relatively modest income levels. So you started off at a high point.
Right.
So if you never went down and you only went up, right, you kind of locked in this position. But sometimes I see some of these like master plan and other surveys, and people, where are the grants? And it's like, dude, your budget's 30 million, you get 9 million, Chapter 70. Don't complain, because the folks up in Sutton don't get a tiny fraction of what we get. So their tax rate reflects what they have to sustain for a K-12 school system.
Well, they're making up for the fact that so much of our land is state forest and doesn't generate any revenue.
You know, I can't fault the state on the pilot, because your slice of the pie changes every year. It's got to do with your total acreage that you have. The state's buying land all around the state. So if they're not buying land in Douglas, guess what? Your tiny share is getting even smaller.
Yeah, yeah.
And how much resources is the legislature putting into the pilot fund? That's the other piece of it. You can only divide up the pie they give you. So for the past few years, and this is why what's going on at the state could have a devastating impact on Douglas. I'm not talking about the worst case scenarios, but if the governor and the legislature feel like they need to really pull back state spending, these programs like Circuit Breaker and Pilot are going to be under tremendous budget pressure. We won't get any grants, competitive grants. They'll all be zeroed out. And we'll be pretty much in stasis, and they won't have any resources to give us. So you can pick whatever fight you want to if you're the governor of Massachusetts. Just realize if you lose, you've lost a lot for your people, and it's just not cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that's the precipice we're looking over. But right now, Pilot's been pretty healthy. The state's been adding properties in Douglas at a slow pace, but our share hasn't slipped, and the pie has been more or less fully funded.
Okay, but if you look at the warrant, we're not going to go through every warrant article because...
Because I blabbed.
Because it's 8:15.
Well, because some of them are the kinds of things we do every year. But, Matt, could you give just a real background to the Article 13, why there's a whole new bylaw amendment for marijuana? What's the backstory to that?
I'll try to be much more brief.
Because we have
I'd
one
like to
currently,
give context on the budget, but on this, so the CCC is the world's most aggressive and nasty bureaucracy that was ever created. And they want to take control and micromanage everything that has to do with cannabis. And they want to basically tell us who we can give host community agreements to by dictating that a certain class of people deserve a leg up in that competition. And they have their policy reasons for feeling that way. They sent us a very nasty gram, because I ignored them the first time. So it's been a year. You're going to pass this equity bylaw around your host community agreements or else. And, you know, the fact is, last year we took in $248,000 in cannabis excise taxes. So not real excited in having the CCC fine us or somehow say that we're not entitled to our share of the excise tax. So I want to go along with them. I'm just going to do it differently. Land Use Council is drafting a marijuana bylaw that would strike and replace. So we're going to get rid of our existing bylaw, none of which complies with current state law. So it's all going to, it was all.
So this is
3 years ago it was moot.
Strike and replace, huh?
Yeah. And the way I've asked Land Council to write this up is, rather than play along and just take their template. So what you guys see in the selectmen's packet and what we discussed is just what they want us to pass. I'm asking council to write a bylaw that's more like, we don't have any rules,
So
folks.
this is,
If you want a host community agreement in Douglas, just apply. You don't get a leg up for anything. The business climate will decide. The more pot you sell, good for you. Because the reality is this, to start a cannabis retail business, you need to have money. You need to have a couple $1 million liquid, because you got to build your store, you've got to comply with all the security requirements, you got to get all the licensing done, purchase all your inventory, and then you can start to sell. So I'm sorry, I think I do okay in life. I have nowhere near enough wherewithal. If I mortgaged everything I had, sold everything I had, I couldn't have a cannabis business. So let's just make it free for, open to everyone. Just go ahead and apply, you get it. Find a place to do business and see if you survive or not.
so,
I'm hoping that will satisfy their impulse at the CCC.
so is the backstory to Article 13 is the state
It's mandating that.
mandating this wording or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anybody briefly have a question on any other of the article you see in front of you? Because in 2 weeks, we're going
Somebody
to go.
might ask, don't we have host community agreements where we receive payments? And the answer is no.
Okay.
We get our cannabis excise tax on the sale of product. But those host community agreements had us get like $100,000 a year. I never pursued it because the CCC basically said, you cannot do this anymore unless you have paperwork proving every last expense that you actually used. And the reality is, we don't run in the cops or anybody else anymore to these stores, actually less than we do other businesses. So there was no justification for those host community fees, therefore we have not sought them
Okay.
in 5 years. Sorry to interrupt, I thought people
Yeah,
would ask.
well, thank you, Matt. Anybody else, as you look at the 14 articles on the warrant, are there any others you want a little backstory about now? Gene, are there any that are kind of funky in your opinion of,
No, I don't think so. Mike Fitzpatrick and Bob Van Erich will be at your next meeting on October 28th.
and Bob Sullivan too, maybe?
He'll zoom in.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So,
And these demolitions, Matt, 10, 11, and 12, Articles 10, 11, and 12, those pretty straightforward?
well, they seem that way. I think, is 12 the Buckeye property Main Street address?
The 104 Main.
104? I don't know if that's going to stay.
Okay.
That property was jointly purchased by the Water Sewer Commission and the town of Douglas, so the enterprise fund and the general fund. I'm okay with being a bureaucrat and thinking of things. Then there's a time at which a building just needs to come down, period. Because it's full of mold and it's nasty and it's never going to be rehabbed, it's never going to be used, so just take care of it before it gets too crazy. Same thing with what we all refer to as the little brown house over at the soccer field in the front. The third demolition is the execution of a court order. So we obtained a direct order from a judge to tear that house down and lien the owner. And so we kind of have to comply with that. It's not as harsh as I'm making it sound. The town sought the authority, the clock has run. Now the judge is asking, why hasn't the town torn the house down yet? And our answer is, because we have to have town meeting to get the funds, so I can let out the contract to conduct the demolition.
So when we're going to put the lien against this, where's the lien going?
It'll go against the property.
Yeah, but the property's not worth anything. It's not buildable, it's not worth anything.
It's worth something.
What's it worth? If you can't build on it, what's it worth?
It's a boat launch.
It's worth crap, it's not worth $50,000.
They own the property across the street, so.
But, where is the money on this? Like, I'd say leave it there, let it fall down. It's not like the other ones that look like they're dangerous.
So the rest of the context, I appreciate the feedback, but the neighbor has filed contempt. So we just, enough's enough. It's been sitting there for 10 years, it's not going to fall down on, so. I'm not holding the lien out as a way to pay for it, it's just, we have the opportunity to do it.
Are there any,
The one I wanted to talk about is the fire department project. I wanted to get the history out on this. There's a capital item. It's electrical and HVAC, the fire department. Are we doing that in this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Mike
see.
Fitzpatrick is going to come in
Article 4.
for,
Yep.
oh, capital improvement, yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot in that one, isn't there?
Well, the fire station got hit by lightning and the electrical system needed to be repaired. Item number 2, we did an air quality test in the fire station and it failed. It didn't fail the way the highway barn did, so instead of failing all the time, it spiked. But we still got a recommendation from our environmental consultant that we couldn't ignore that. So over the years, we went to town meeting and got funds for an electrical project and for an HVAC project.
Right.
The two projects together required a small amount of general contracting work. You know, putting up a non-bearing wall to sequester some of the dirty air from the clean air and to allow for return air to come in. And when we put the project out to bid, the filed subcontractors' costs came in under budget. So we were excited. Then the general contractor, because we think there's only about $25,000 worth of general contracting work, added $223,000 to the base bid and blew the budget. So we did not award a contract. I asked the Inspector General if I was allowed to award at least a piece of the project so that we could expend some of the funds that town meeting had approved, and the answer was no. You have to let the contract out in the form that you bid it out. So with Gene's work and Chairman Fitzpatrick's work on the Capital Committee and the Capital Committee's support, we're at this point now where it's going to be one project, one funding source, but I might let it out as more than one project. So if you can kind of reversing it. Instead of having a bunch of projects with their individual funding sources, I have one funding source, and I'm going to pick the project apart a little bit. I can get that general contracting work done, I think, for 25, 50 grand, and I can use a statewide contract without any bidding at all, just to put up, for crying out loud, a non-bearing wall and a couple of bollards outside. Once that piece is done, the building will be ready for step one, which would be the electrical project. I don't want to do HVAC, and then the HVAC is dependent upon the new electrical service, right? So you're plugging in all kinds of new stuff, you need it to be, the juice to be there. And that's the complexity. It's not that we couldn't figure out what this cost. Actually, our cost estimates were really good, and the filed sub-bids came back on budget. It's just that the general contractor piled on a bunch of profit that we couldn't afford to spend out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Matt. Anybody else on any of the warrant articles that we're going to vote on in 2 weeks? Everybody good?
Are we buying the trailer that we're using now for the highway department?
Yep, the economics. By the time we actually build something and occupy it, we would have paid more money in rent than so we asked for the purchase price.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for Matt? Anybody? Because after this, we're going to do some minutes, and then we'll be heading to the
Are
end.
we back to square one on the barn?
Not really.
But that piece of property that was,
Tune in to the BFCC tomorrow for the full explanation.
I can't, it's for
Yeah, well, I know, you'll be in Italy. Selling retiree plans on the exchange. Every deed in that part of town that referenced the easement that connects Main Street to the properties behind the ones with frontage references an easement. And when we were doing our initial assessment of our existing town properties because it looked like it was burdened with the easement. We were trying to find a way to escape the burden of the easement. And that was the controlling thought process. When we walked away from the transaction with the landowner in the back, she's one of the people who benefits from that easement. So the next inquiry was, well, can we at least pay you something to get you to give up your easement so we can put the barn across that space on our existing highway property, right? This sent us in a different direction with the title research, right? It took us to the town's lot to see what deed created the easement, because we needed to figure out how big the easement was to get a per square foot estimate and the cost of buying out the cost of the easement. Some of you have been active in town affairs for a long time. I am going to ask you for memory lane. In the year 2000, Y2K, remember all that? I don't remember who was popular music back then. U2, I guess. The town of Douglas purchased the corner from Maury. Nice Christmas Carol last name. And when they purchased the Maury property, if you look carefully at the old deeds, the highway barn went up to a point, and the fire station property, the Maury property, went up to a certain point. Those points didn't meet because there was a strip of land held in fee simple by the Buxtons. It was not an easement, it was their property. It was a sliver of land. The town couldn't resolve that situation until they bought the Maury property. When you bought the Maury property, you then split off a sliver of land in between where the fire station was going to go and Mr. Tassino's 3 buildings and the machine shop. You split off a sliver of land and swapped it with Buxton for her piece in the middle of the 2 town buildings. And when you swapped it, you transferred all the utility rights to the new piece. So if you now pull the Buxton property site plan, it shows that she owns full in fee simple all the way from her driveway, a long driveway out to Rydell Road. And that's where the electricity and all utilities can be moved in order to be able to unify the highway barn property with the fire station property. That deed was given to her and she filed it. So she has signed it, it's her name on the deed, it's at the Registry of Deeds. So that exchange was completely done. I'm guessing the town never forced the utilities to be moved because they didn't need it. So why make anybody spend any money? It was there in perpetuity. So what I have to do is get the title attorney to put this in a legal opinion and bless it and say, I'll take responsibility for this analysis. But now we have the highway barn can fit on the existing town property, eliminating running the utilities and buying the real estate and all that hocus pocus. We still have to work with the architect to change his attitude towards how the building's going to get built. If you look at the existing highway barn, you'll notice it's actually a couple of additions onto an old building. We would keep the green piece with the 3 high doors and tear down the front piece. So we might have to build a little office space, but your barn will be pretty much, I don't know if it's going to run perpendicular to Main Street or parallel to it. I haven't seen a conceptual plan, but as of this morning, that's what I asked the architect to at least draw it up. This creates an interesting dynamic with the power feeds to the building, because if you know what you're looking at the end of Mrs. Buxton's driveway, right next to the machine shop, there's a pole. That's 3-phase power. 3-phase power is to that pole, there's 3 cans on it. That could be where we put the power under the ground and feed both the fire station and the new highway barn.
But what about, so you're saying that I'm going to say GBI, but it's not, the woman who ended up with that property that we were originally looking at. There's no right-of-way from there onto Main Street then?
No.
They don't have a right-of-way? They never had an easement?
All those easement rights were transferred from one Buxton piece to the other Buxton piece.
Okay. So they're all transferred there? That's what your title person tells you?
Because the language in the deed is actually very specific about that. All the rights of all benefited parties are transferred to this. So that's the deed that she accepted. She acknowledged that. And then now you have town meeting minutes
Yeah.
also to benefit.
So she can give away the rights that someone else had?
No, so by deed, the town moved those rights over to the town land, then deeded that strip to Buxton, and she accepted it.
Right. And the other people did not have to agree to that?
No. And I can give you the case if you want to read it. So there's a
Yeah, I'm interested in reading.
There's a Supreme Judicial
Yes,
Court
but you
case.
can change it right away. Absolutely.
As long as
that's
you
true. Yeah.
give them the same right.
Yeah, that is true. In fact, I told you about that.
Yes, you did. I'm just reminding you very nicely.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Lynn? Anybody else for Matt? All right, Mr. Wojcik, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Appreciate
night.
Thank you.
So let's do minutes next, everybody, okay? I sent them to you, so let's look at March 5, or May 5. So Rob, you had a correction that because we tabled them, I don't think it got into the final one. So remind everybody again what your correction is for the May 5
So
minutes.
for the May 5, it mentions that I was opposed to the one expense. I don't remember which one. I don't actually have the minutes right here.
So it says, I'll read it. So motion to approve the transfer in the amount of $45,6551 from community development salaries to selectmen expenses made by Heather, second by Rob.
Right.
This is Rod Leonardo opposed, all of the members in favor and passed. Is that?
Correct. I was not the one who opposed. I don't remember who was, but it was not me.
Okay.
Is it Ryan, maybe?
I believe it says on here that it says absent Ryan excused, but he came late to the meeting. Didn't he show up late?
Let me
We
just check.
could wait on these and then just watch the TV program.
Right.
Because I think it was Ryan who was opposed, and like I said, Ryan had shown up late to the meeting.
Let's see.
I would have them go back and review the tape to correct it.
Okay, so we'll pass on May 5, and I'll make a point of going back there and watching that again, and then you guys can all do it too if you want, but I'll make sure I go to May 5 and look at that again. So we'll pass on May 5. How about June 3? Any comments or questions on those minutes, everybody?
Make a motion to approve the June 3rd meeting minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so Heather moves, we approve June 3 as written. Heather, is that right?
Correct.
Rob seconds. Any discussion on the June 3 minutes, anybody? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain, so that's unanimous. Well, by the way, I want the notes to, or the minutes to say too that, so Howard's absent with notice, Ryan is absent with notice, Mike Hutnack's absent, but I haven't heard from him, so if the minutes could reflect that, then everybody else was here. And then let's look at, okay, whatever we're doing. Oh, June 24. Any questions on June 24, anybody?
Motion to approve as presented.
Okay, so Rob moves and second by Lynn. Okay, any discussion? Anybody, June 24? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain. That is unanimous. So, 2 weeks we'll go through all the warrant articles and we'll vote on recommending. Is your sense, everybody, that the right to farm is minimal enough with the financial impact that we could simply take no position on it? Because we can do that, right? I mean, like, I was explaining this to somebody the other day, said, imagine there's a warrant article to change the name of a subdivision.
Right.
You know, that has no inherent financial thing, we could just pass on it, but just something to think about.
Yeah,
for-
right.
Because I think they presented enough information that, you know, it really, for the different questions we had about potential impacts from a financial perspective, most of the questions we had were, you know, even Matt was saying, with my regard to the risk of litigation, he was saying that, you know, there was very specific guardrails in place. So I really think that it's a minimal impact with, you know, the commission's volunteer. You know, I really don't see much of a financial concern. Any other concerns is in someone's, you know, personal business, but I don't think it's finance committee
You're right,
business.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning to,
I
so.
think there'll be a minimal one. I think there'll be a little
There'll
bit,
be.
I think you're going to have more time with the animal inspector, but
Yeah, I think it'll be, because they have to keep them separated, right? They're doing exactly
Right.
separated, right? So there is going to be a financial impact.
yeah,
Will we be able to, you know, navigate it? I
Right.
think what Matt said to us is there's a way to navigate that, right? There's, you know, but could it be depending on, could explode too. But what we know today, it's workable. That's what I
Right.
felt that
Yeah.
came from Matt.
So just as you have opportunity the next couple of weeks, maybe read over the warrant again, and then we'll, I don't know if we'd have time at our meeting in 2 weeks to try to get BBT people in.
oh, I think you should. Never mind BVT, just get our guy. We don't need the rest of them.
You need to
We need to get our
negotiate.
guy to get him to work on them. We don't need them here working on him.
But if he's not part of the...
If he's not part of the
committee-
negotiation, Carol,
He's
he's
not-
not going to be able to say anything.
Really? So you
Yeah.
don't think he's part of it?
No, I don't know. I don't know if he's a part of it.
Well,
How do we find out?
I call them.
Okay, find out.
So, so Gene, when we work on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, we may have a BBT part of it, but just think, you guys, if we're going through the whole warrant articles, will that be enough for one night's meeting, or do you want to try to put more in there, though? I'm just thinking of the time.
I think we will need the recommendations because we have a very tight time frame
Yeah.
with the town meeting.
You have anything for us, Gene, as far as any of the warrant things or stuff that's in your office that you think we should know about?
Just a couple things. I'll just come up.
Yep.
I don't know if you have any questions on Article 3. That's pretty much in, you know,
That's kind of standard.
it's standard. As long as you all are aware of that, there's no, for me, there's no real surprises. We look at the budget again, and we look at the departments that need assistance to get us through the next town meeting. I do want to tell you that free cash was certified at 3.593615. If all the articles were approved using free cash, it would be using 764,801.31. Most of that is to the fire department. As Matt said, we are combining them, so I don't want you to be confused. I'm just going to put this little footnote. We're
Which
basically-
article are we looking at now?
Article 4.
Okay.
So you're basically, we have an account called Fire Repairs and Improvements right now. There's $236,100 in that account. This $763,900 will be added to that, so the project will be $1 million. You're going to see further under the funds, you're going to see something closing out under fire station electrical upgrade. It was just easier. Instead of trying to put wording in, we tried to do this with the roof. It caused more confusion before than it cared to. So we're adding it. That whole line is going to be $1 million, and this 208 is in sense adding, you know, it's using that to fund it. So anything, again, for anybody new, anything, the funds necessary, the PO parking lot, those are all projects that we have completed. there was a residual balance, we leave them in the account until we can transfer them to another capital project. That's what I consider pay-as-you-go. So just in case you had any questions when you're reading through it, I don't, I hate to jinx myself, but I said to Lisa, I feel like we're in good shape. I don't see any surprises here. I think we're trying to, get a handle on the capital, doing some now, and then, we'll look at it again in May for the rest of the articles.
How's our free cash amount historically for?
This is still, this is probably,
compared to other
I don't have the
years, are we
history.
good?
This is about where we were last year.
Okay.
Remember, we didn't spend all of it last year, though. So we, you end with a balance that becomes your beginning balance, and you add any turnbacks, any receipts. So we did, earnings and investments was over 600,000. When you talk about increasing your estimate for any kind of revenue, that potentially decreases your free cash, because you're getting those budgets tighter. That's just how it works. We still like to have free cash and stabilization of 5% of the operating budget.
So with the change that you were talking about with Article 4 there with the 200,000, at the bottom here where you have all of the different funds necessary, so the transfer from free cash, that won't change at all? Where you said you're going to be adding...
That's already included. I already factored everything, yeah.
I got you.
The articles, other than Article 14, I think the articles are finished.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm afraid to jinx myself.
Because I noticed it starts off with it's like the end of The Sopranos, where all of a sudden, in mid-sentence it cuts off.
I'm going to knock on wood and, footnote it, but...
What is Article 14 that's not written out?
I don't have any information, that's why it's at the end. We don't have it.
That's why I said
We don't
it's
know
like
if
the end
it's
of The
staying.
Sopranos.
It's a placeholder at this point.
Yeah, it is a placeholder.
Yeah.
Now, what if someone hadn't seen the last episode of The Sopranos?
I haven't seen any of the
Spoiler alert.
Sopranos.
Seen the
Go to
first
YouTube,
episode,
yeah.
But it didn't interest me.
So if you have any questions, I'll be at your next meeting anyways, but I don't, yeah.
So just along those lines, so that nobody makes the foolish mistake that I made last week, it says next meeting October 18th, it's actually October 28th.
Right,
Because I
exactly.
showed up last week for the meeting, so.
I did point that out to Dick.
Yeah, so that's a typo, you guys.
It is
It's,
typo.
October 28th?
October
28th.
Just
28th.
wait for emails from Dick.
Oh, he sent out the email that it was the 14th, and I still showed up last week, so.
But you want us to wish you a happy birthday, so we all know.
Yeah. All right, anybody have anything, loose end kind of thing or question on anything? All right, let's have a motion to adjourn then.
Motion to adjourn?
Sandy, thank you.
Second.
Second by Rob. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No? Against? Abstain? Okay. We adjourn at 8:49.